a guest on our show who's been on our show before, but I wanted to bring her back because I've been reading one of the books that she gave me, and oh my gosh, I think that this book needs to be in more hands. I think that people need to read this book. Before I get started, I just want to, just to give a shout out to some of our past guests, on the show. We've had so many wonderful guests, and of course, Albert Quintana. He's an author. He's written his book, No More Green Chili. We have so many guests. Dennis Ty also was one of our past guests. Wrote the book, The Road Home. The Last Ride. Excuse me, Dennis.
Okay.
Oh.
You're way off your mic.
Are we on here?
Barely now.
Okay.
You got started 2 minutes ahead of time.
Oh shoot! It said 10 o'clock on the clock here.
I know, but you gotta wait till it spins.
Forgive me. I will start over.
Yes.
That's live broadcasting for you. Sorry, Donna. Okay, guys. Thank you again for joining us. You are watching Weekend Boost on KUHS The Stream, and I am Paul Lane. Before we get started, I just want to talk about just some of our past guests, some really exciting guests. Dennis Ty wrote a book called The Last Ride. I started introducing it, and Dennis is a 5-star bestseller. He's just really been on my heart a lot lately. We've had so many wonderful people that are mystics and astrologers and psychics, and today on our show we're going to have a woman, Donna Denome, who's written 5 books now.
I'm working on my 7th.
On her 7th book, and I was fortunate enough to get my hands on a couple of her books, and oh my gosh, I tell you, we're going to talk about her book, The 8 Keys to Wholeness, today. But next 2 weeks from now on our show, I'm going to have a very special show. I found this book in about 1980, and it was actually published back in the 70s, but it's called Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. And this book was a phenomenon when it was written, and it's really a true first-hand account of the Native Americans in this country, and the unbelievable cruelty that they were handed, and the reality of the American treaty and how it affected so many people in such a negative way. And so we're going to be talking about that in 2 weeks, but I'm really excited about it. I really think that you're going to get a lot out of that show. But today, brace yourself, because we have some very relevant information. The book, 8 Keys to Wholeness, was written by Donna Denome. And Donna, thank you for joining us today. How are you today?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Yes, we're like I told you, I got so much out of your book, and I'm reading it now, and I just can't put it down. It's just I think the one word that I take away from that is trauma, and I mean that in a positive way, if it can be stated positively, because we talked a little bit about that on our show when you were here, and so many of us are impacted all through our lifetimes by that trauma. And trauma could be minimal. It could, it might be something as bad as you got your hand slapped by someone at school, or it could be something as terrible as you witnessed a murder. I mean, trauma is something that's very hard to gauge and measure, but we all face trauma, and we all need relief from trauma. And Donna, with that, let me just throw it over to you. And what is your thought on that topic?
Well, I think you've done a beautiful introduction, Paul, in terms of, everyone has difficulty. Everyone has challenge. We all go through our trials, our tribulations, whatever. Some more than others, certainly. But I think everyone's pain matters. Everyone's pain is important, is significant, and needs to be given attention and care and nurturing, so that we can grow from that place of pain to a place where we can mine or extract the lessons, the insight, the information, the gifts that are held in that trauma, because regardless of our experiences, there are always gifts.
Absolutely.
There are always gifts. But everyone's pain matters, and I feel like this is such a fundamental statement in the sense that one commonality that I've seen working with victims of trauma in different ways through the years, over 30 years of doing coaching work with people, I've seen that many, many times we minimize our trauma. And certainly it can be a coping mechanism to minimize the trauma so that you then go on and you're successful in life. Excuse me. And yet it can also be missing the point of acknowledging that that was an experience that happened to you.
Yes.
Or experiences that happened to you that were difficult and that you came through it. So I believe in acknowledging the trauma and yet not being stuck there, not having that define us or be the totality of who we are, but certainly to own it as a part of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I've had my own experience with that as a very successful person in the world. For many, many years, I didn't speak about my own trauma. You know, and it wasn't because I was ashamed or stuck in some kind of place of not owning it for myself, but I had seen where when I spoke about it, it was difficult
Mm-hmm.
for other people to hear. So I stopped talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, well, I never got started in the beginning,
Yes.
I guess I would say. You know, when I just had told a handful of people what happened to me, out of that handful of people, the majority of them, it was difficult for them to hear. So as we put ourselves in a place where we can sit with another person in their trauma and witness them and be present to them, not having to fix it or try to talk it away, but just simply acknowledging this happened to you, and maybe I'm sorry that that happened to you. We shift the collective idea of what trauma is and the idea that we have to sweep it under the rug.
Oh, yes. And I think that so many people go through life bearing that burden and not ever addressing it or facing or accepting it or admitting it. And I think it just takes so much away from you. I got to tell you that since I've been reading your book, I've been you know, exploring and discovering traumas within my own life, and you know, I you know, every time I get to a new chapter and it talks about you know, how you can address these traumas or these issues in your life through the chakras that are in your body, and it just, I mean, it just all of a sudden resonated with me that this is really a tool to help someone get past these terrible things.
Yes.
Yes. And, you know, we talk about chakras on the show all the time. Can you just give me just a brief synopsis? What is a chakra and why is it relevant?
Well, the chakras are energy system. It's the energy system within the body. You know, it's ancient. We didn't make it up in this modern time. It's been spoken about and written about for eons of time. And chakras have been referred to as a map of what's going on in our world, meaning our individual world. So it gauges both the mental, emotional, spiritual, energetic health of the body, of the body and the person who is, you know, present, but it also picks up energy from around us in the world. Mm-hmm. And so it's a really good tool for sort of diagnosing or recognizing what is the health of that individual. Mm-hmm. And of course, when we have something out of balance in one of our chakras, we can manifest disease or an imbalance there. And, you know, that's why focusing on it for healing can be so profound because it can heal on all levels. And I also work with the eight keys work. I also like to focus on, number one, the healing, but then after that, after we meet and root out and cater to or tend to the wounds that are held there, then we actually create space. And I know that we're infinite beings. Yes, we are. We're infinite beings at soul essence. But in this physical body, we are finite. And so when we clear some of that, I call it caca or ick, when we clear some of that and we glean those insights and what's valuable from those wounds, we leave space. And in that space, we can draw in a part of us that is not yet expressed, that is not yet actualized. And that's where the experiential growth comes in. That's when we take those wounds that were so hard, so in some cases horrific, and we actually use them as growth tools so that we can evolve into that beautiful soul essence that is at the core of who each of us is.
Oh man, that is so beautiful, well stated. You know, I've seen as I've done my learning on chakras, I've kind of likened it to a line, a vertical line, and each of the chakras is on that vertical line. But when our chakras are out of alignment or out of balance or distorted for some reason, then that alignment is almost like a side-to-side alignment. And I'm a student, so I'm just kind of telling you my perspective. And when we focus on and take care of ourselves in that chakra, we bring that alignment into place, and there's more harmony in every area of our life. And does that characterize it?
I think that's a good visual for you to have, Paul, in terms of it's almost like the steering on a sailboat, right? Where you do slight changes to bring your course into alignment or to be headed in the direction that you desire to go. Also, chakras you can have an excess of energy, you can have a depletion of energy. So I don't see them necessarily moving off of that column, but in their form, they change shape, they change color, they change intensity, effervescence, vitality. You might have a sluggish chakra, you may have one that's sort of shut down or closed off. And we see this a lot when someone has just experienced a trauma. And as someone who works from the healing perspective, I don't necessarily come in and open that chakra way open or wide open, because sometimes coming closed a little bit may be actually a defense mechanism. And so we have to be careful with our Western mind that we don't, put something into a black and white perspective.
Yes.
I like to say that we want to have the chakras in balance and harmony for the best health of the individual. So like right now we're communicating, we're sharing information. Our throat chakra may be more open than something else. Hopefully our heart is also open because we're sharing from that place. And maybe our center of insight is open as well. There would be some other chakras that may not be as open. So we can work with them to, I think awareness is really kind of the first level And I applaud you for being so aware. I know that you tap into and acknowledge the chakras daily. And I think it can be very helpful to do that and to just be aware of your own body. I've seen some people who manifest disease and have no idea that something was out of balance. So just listening to your body, all of your body, including the energetic piece, is very helpful.
Wow. Yes, and that's so profound, just realizing that you have these energy centers in your being that are powerful and that are healing and that are, I mean, they really bring wholeness. You know, I mean, the title of your book, Wholeness, and when I think of chakra alignment, that is the exact word that comes to mind. Because when we become whole, you know, I was just looking at a section in your book, you know, and there was a quote by someone that says, "We must become our own physicians, and we must become our own healers." And I happen to have been, you know, I'm kind of in between 6 books I all the time, but the book Becoming Supernatural talks exactly about that. Spontaneous healing through chakra alignment, you know, and it's just like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing that we can actually be our own physician. And I think it's just liberating to understand that, you know, and just developing that gift or that skill.
Well, to speak to your point, you know, I was someone who got every little cold and flu that went around when I got involved with this area of study and expertise. And, you know, now where I am, the last time that I was sick was 2012. And I remember exactly when that happened, and I was in graduate school again, and I had just started a project that focused on my childhood sexual abuse, and within 45 minutes of starting that project, I couldn't speak, which, you know, is very fitting for what was going on, and I believe I was tapping into old material, and that's why I got sick, which is another point, because sometimes illness, you know, is there for a reason. And I just want to finish that thought, because prior to that, it had been, you know, another 8 to 10 years that I had been sick. So I literally go decade or more without getting ill. And yet when I do, I look at where is this centered and why. You know, that time in 2012 was around my chest. It was actually diagnosed as adult croup, and I couldn't speak, and I had this weird barking cough. It makes sense when you think of it as touching on old trapped energy of a deep wound.
Wow.
And so we can look at these things as guideposts, and that's the work of the 8 essential keys, is we look at what guideposts are there, and we follow those paths into the wilderness of the individual to discover not necessarily all the details about how they were wounded, but what area is this? What was harmed? What was threatened? What was put into a place of question? I say that because often things like trusting another individual or truly loving someone, you know, in my case, the person who abused me was very charismatic, and I loved him. So has that been a challenge for me in the area of love and relationship? You bet.
Absolutely.
But by looking at those aspects, we can sort of pull apart the threads of this knotted little ball. And as that opens up is when the true and lasting healing comes, when the transformation comes, when the true integration into the wholeness of who we are. Who I am today is not who I was when I started my healing work.
Absolutely.
And so I walk that trek with other individuals. I've been referred to as a spiritual Sherpa because I can help to carry that heavy burden or that heavy load up the mountain. I'm not going to take it from you. It's still yours. You know, no one can do the work for the individual. We each have to do that work for ourselves. And the good news about that is we carry away the treasures and they become a part of our heritage. I call it our wisdom story.
Absolutely. Now, I'm sure that there's people out there listening to us right now, and there's someone out there who is really facing some trauma, and maybe they're considering ordering your book, and they're afraid that they don't have the skills to do this. And reading your book, you were able to see people's auras at a young age, and you were very gifted. And I just want to put it out there that if you are watching the show and you don't have psychic abilities, and if you don't have shamanic training, and if you don't have the background that Donna does, this book is a very straightforward tool. I mean, for me, as I read through it, it was so easy to comprehend, and I didn't have to read. I mean, there's times when I had to read a sentence or a paragraph twice, but it was because it was so meaty. There was so much relevant information in it. It's like, oh my gosh, I got to chew this one again, And so, I just want to encourage you, if you're watching today and you feel ill-equipped and you feel like maybe you're not ready for this, I got to tell you, this book is very easy to understand, easy to follow, and it doesn't take someone of extreme skill or experience to pick up and use the principles in this book. And I just wanted to throw that out there.
Well, thank you, Paul. And I want to say that I feel like this book works best for people who are in a situation where they're really pretty well adjusted, but perhaps there's this thing that keeps noodling them or nudging them from their past that seems undone or hasn't been tended to in a full way. And I find that those people can go through the book on their own and work through the processes and are fine. It's helpful for them.
Yes.
On the other hand, if someone feels that they are not equipped to do that work on their own, there's a couple of things I would suggest. One is certainly reach out to someone who is professionally trained, who you know and trust, to enter into a one-on-one coaching or counseling relationship with that person. Having someone who you can refer to as a touchstone, who can help you walk through the different layers. Trauma is very complex, and especially if it was very traumatic or you've held on to it for a long time and you've never wanted to look at it and you've held it at bay and it's grown in its intensity, and especially if you're having PTSD or anything like that. You want to have someone to walk with you through that process. And the other option that is available, and in fact, this is such good timing that you reached out to me and invited me on to your program today, because in March, we're launching again the program, which is a 9-week program. It's a get you started week and then 8 weeks that follow the book in terms of walking through it with me, helping to monitor you.
So if someone wants to reach you, oh, I'm sorry, forgive me. Go ahead.
Oh, and what I wanted to just say about that is in that program, I have, of course, added other things that support that. Like, I don't think you're to the 8th key yet, but it's one of my favorite parts, and a lot of people love that. And it's grown in material since this book was published a few years ago. And so people really rave about that part of the program. And also, we provide the book as a companion for that program, and a little reference card that's been designed so that you can refer back and forth to the centers and consider it in your meditations and your daily work, and also one private session with me. I need either by phone or on Zoom, so that I can connect with each person and know what it is that they're coming in with that they want to work on in this program.
Wow.
And right now, because we're this far ahead, I'm in my phase where I'm offering an early discount for that program, and I would extend that. That's normally for my students only, but I would extend that to your listeners.
Oh, fantastic. So if someone wanted to reach you, what's the best way to reach you, Donna? Or to get a hold of, to get enrolled in this?
Yes. Well, and if they can see my name there on the screen, they can reach out to me via Donna at donnadenome.com, or they can reach out to me, info at Wild Success for You, the number 4, Wild Success for You.
Info at Wild Success for You. I'm going to write that down.
Yes, and well, Paul, this is so interesting, but just last night, very late, we launched the new website. We just pushed the button on the new website. In fact, there's a few links that aren't connected yet, so be gentle with me.
Okay.
But there's a lot of information up there, and listeners can go there to check out the 8 essential keys, tools for hope-filled healing and expansive evolutionary growth, as well as some other programs and other books.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. By the way, you had given me a gift on, the last time you were on the show, and I forwarded that off to my granddaughter, and I'm really looking forward to hearing back from them today to find out, get their feedback, because I know that they're going to get as much out of it as we have.
That's exciting.
Oh, it is. I think that your wisdom is something that definitely needs to be on the center stage, because I personally am getting a lot out of this. I've seen a lot more harmony in my life since I started reading, and I'm not even halfway through the book, but I've really felt a sense of peace and harmony. And I mean, I'm doing some other things as well, but honestly, I feel like this book is really a practical application for finding that wholeness. And I think wholeness is such an apropos word, because wholeness encompasses many, many aspects and many parts of life. And so I thought it was very appropriately named.
Well, and I tried to be not necessarily comprehensive. In fact, I want to mention, for any serious student of chakras, you definitely want to check out Anadea Judith. She is the master with chakras, and definitely is one of my teachers. I love her and her work. She was a pioneer as well. But what I've done in this book is, someone who knows nothing about chakras can come to this book, because each chapter, so if each chapter focuses on a key, and in that I begin with an invocation or a centering that helps people to understand and energetically move into the feeling of the chakra. Then I have a teaching about that chakra. Then I sort of connect that with the key, because the key is more than just the chakra. And then I go through activities, stories, meditations, centerings, all different kinds of things, so that we can really feel in and through what the information and the understanding of that key is about. And then I end with a meditation to bring you into that center, to clear it, to activate it, and to open it up to that expansion that I speak about. And when people do the program, they really have a lot to say about those meditations. Many people feel that it's worth the price of the program itself just to go through those 8 deep, deep meditations. Of course, guided imagery meditations is an area of specialty for me. I love it. I'm very inspired by my guides, by my guidance, spiritual guidance, and I feel that it truly is an activation that can help each of those energy centers come into alignment.
Now, Donna, if there's someone who's their spirituality, they're very, I don't want to use the word religion because I don't want that to sound bad. If there's someone who's very involved in their church, and they're very adamant that, you know, maybe they fear that this is something that is harmful, or this is evil or dark, and I personally have explored this, and I don't see anything that's threatening or harmful, or would, you know, I just would like your thoughts on that.
Yes, this is a very good point. You know, this is in no way connected to a religion, although there may be some religions that acknowledge and focus on the chakras. The way that I work with it, I come from a very strong background in traditional and depth psychology. Depth is the unconscious, studying that unconscious part of us, which of course I utilize in here. I do come from the shamanism, which you mentioned, from that wisdom tradition, and also conscious energy work. I'm a master teacher and have been over 30 years in that area of study. So all of this gets woven in there. It is not religious in nature, but of course each individual needs to look within themselves and see if this resonates with them. If it doesn't resonate with you, that's okay. I believe there is not one path up the mountain, which may or may not be what someone else believes. But if this isn't an area that you're drawn for your exploration, for your healing, for your growth, you will be drawn where it's appropriate for you, to the right place for you. And I trust in that implicitly. But it isn't religious at all in this way that I present it.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, my guides are jumping in. So I have to change that answer just a little bit. It is not religious, but it is extremely spiritual.
Yes.
Because when we get into the upper chakras, part of what it does is to connect you more directly and more profoundly with your spiritual nature, both from the place of what you can receive, the guidance you can receive from that, and also what you express, how you can bring that how you can bring that divine nature into your being and then express it through your daily life. I feel like it takes our fragmented selves and it brings it into that place of wholeness and alignment with our divine or our essential nature.
Yes.
And so that very much is a part of this work. Again, it is not religious, but it is extremely spiritual. So for someone who doesn't for some reason want to speak about God, you can think of spirit, you can think of universal life force energy, but it will definitely tap you in to your higher essence and also the greater collective connection. All there is.
Very
all
cool.
there is.
Very cool.
And there are gifts that come from that. You know, people identify what their divine gifts are when they go through this program. They identify what is their mission work, what it is that they are to do in the world. And it may not just be one thing. It may be even something like be more loving or be more curious. It isn't necessarily a goal or a career. And we work with how to ground that into the earth and walk forward in a purposeful way. That's the 8th key.
Wow.
It's very exciting. People absolutely love that. And may I say just one more thing about that?
Please.
Is, you know, you mentioned the book before, the author that's coming up. Maybe you could hold it up again.
Oh, Dee Brown, yes.
The Wounded Knee.
Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, yes.
Yes. I read this book many, many years ago.
Me too.
Of course, some of my teachers have been Native, including from the Lakota tradition. And so this book, when people read this book, if we read it from the place of understanding that this happened to somebody else, it's a me, them kind of understanding.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But if you read it from the place of, oh my gosh, this happened to people, and I'm a person too.
Exactly. Oh my gosh.
And I'm connected to these people. They're connected to me. And even though this has happened before, it's not happening in our current time, the fact that this happened is a collective wound, right?
Yes.
So
thank you, Donna.
when we heal our wounds, we contribute to the collective healing. And when we are compassionate about other people's wounds, we contribute to the healing of the collective wounds.
Oh my gosh, that is so, I mean, that is profound. You know, it's so interesting that you said that, because I remember I found this book back in the early 80s. And I was reading it, and I was disassociated. I was reading myself exactly as you said. Oh, this happened to these people. I can't believe this happened to these people. And then I got to the section on the Wounded Knee massacre. And all of a sudden, I don't know, I just almost left my body. And I became that boy on the field that was running for his life. I became that mother who was hitting the head with a lance. And I became the man dying on the frozen ground. And I mean, even still thinking back on it, it was oh my gosh, this book has to be in every library. I mean, anyone who has any compassion at all, any desire to learn about the real history of the United States, and I mean, I don't want to sound like a negative, but this happened. This is history that's been written out, and this is real. These are real human beings that. I mean, there's no end to the atrocities that they faced and still face today. And I think it's so critical that we look at these human beings as human beings and start to understand with compassion that, hey, we've done a tremendous wrong in this nation. And, I think becoming spiritually attached and taking ownership is just really exactly what needs to be done with that.
Well, and this is just one story. I mean, we have so many stories of these atrocities through time and history.
Yes.
My point is that we can impact all of that by how we feel, by how we show up, by how we heal our own wounding. it contributes to the shifting of that collective.
Man,
And again, we work with that in my 8th key.
I love that term, collective. That, Eckhart Tolle talked about collective consciousness, and what you're saying makes so much sense, because I think that the more we add to this collective goodness, or this collective consciousness, I think the more we can really heal our country and our nation and ourselves.
Right. Yes.
Folks, I just want to break for a quick station identification. I am Paul Lane. You are watching the Weekend Boost. This is KUHS The Stream on Melody Drive, and we are talking to author Donna Denome today about her book, 8 Keys to Wholeness. And I personally am in this book. I'm engrossed in it. I'm telling you, it is just so useful and powerful. And I like I said earlier, I just feel like it's brought such a, I don't even know how to explain it, a feeling of harmony within myself that has been almost elusive to me my whole life. And so I've really, really gained greatly from your book.
Oh.
I mean it. It's just been really powerful and useful. And as you go through the book, I'm just kind of just throwing my 2 cents in. As you go through the book, you start off with with your root chakra, and you find out how important that chakra is, and it's for me, it's almost something that I've always tried to set aside, but it's so important that chakra is as important as my heart chakra and my throat chakra, and you have these centered energy points, and grasping and understanding them so much more clearly is just wonderful. Oh, I also want to throw in a side note, forgive me. After I finish today, our show, Paul Chavez will be in, and he'll be doing his show, and then at 1 o'clock, Henry is going to be doing a special Bernie show. So please make sure you tune in and watch Henry this afternoon. I didn't want to leave that out, Henry. So in the 8 Keys to Wholeness, as you were writing this book, I'm guessing that you probably had quite a few aha moments, or moments that you were able to really look at your life and say, wow, this really makes sense now, or I'm really liberated from that burden now. Or was it, as you wrote, were you learning, or were you pretty much aware of all of this as you wrote the book?
Well, certainly as you write, there are realizations that come in. My last book, that I just wrote, was about that. As you feel, so you heal.
Mm-hmm.
A rite of passage.
Love the cover of that book too, by the way.
Is that newest one? Sorry, I'm having trouble with where the camera is on there. Okay.
You're there, yeah.
So I did have those realizations, but Paul, I had done my work, my personal work, so many years before this.
Yes.
And I had then been using the material that's in the book for decades with my clients.
Uh-huh.
So I wasn't really in that place so much of the wounding. I had moved past that, where I was then using those wounds as material, the lessons from it, the insight from it, to help other people.
Mm-hmm.
And this is known quite traditionally as the wounded healer, that we help others according to the experiences that we've had and how we have grown through them, how we have resolved them, how we have come to terms with them.
Mm-hmm.
That all that insight enables us to be better helpers.
Yes.
For other people. Because if you've never been through anything, I'm not sure there's a person alive that hasn't had difficulty, but if you haven't really understood what it is like to be in these situations, you may not have the same compassion or empathy. I don't know. but that's where I come from, is that place of the wounded healer. And of course, Carl Jung talked about that a lot, and I've studied a lot of Jungian psychology and love it. So definitely an area I understand. But the 8 keys actually came out of another master's degree that I went back to school after being out of university for 29 years. I found myself back in school with wonderful professors, and without going into the whole story, our cohort or our group shrunk to just 8 people because the school changed and offered a different curriculum, and there was this mass exodus out to this other curriculum. And so I ended up working with world-renowned professors in a group of 8. And I found myself talking more and more about my experience because it was a safe place to do that. And as I did, then I focused my master's project, my master's thesis, on this area of expertise. So I spent a couple years researching both the chakra system beyond what I knew as a healer, and also the area of trauma or abuse. You know, and in particular my area of abuse. And so I feel like this book is very grounded in academic research, and yet, as you know from reading it, I then spent another year writing this particular book, which is for the general population. So it's not written from an academic standpoint. It's written from you're sitting with me in a private session.
That's exactly how I feel.
And I want to share with you. That's the place I come from.
I love that. You know, it's so well written that you don't. I mean, and I have complete respect for Eckhart Tolle, but his book was written in a way that I have to read every page 3 times.
Yeah.
Because it's. I mean, there's a lot of meat to it, but I mean, he just wrote it on such a high academic level that it was really almost difficult to read, you know, whereas I could pick your book up and I can open up to any page and I can follow along and I can grasp what your point is. Now,
well, you know, I learned with my first book, and I know we talked about that when I was on your show before, and this is kind of a note for all those writers who are listening today. You know, my first book is so simply written. I really had no idea that it would be read by people other than my very own clients who I knew quite well. And I also was going through my own health challenge at the time. So the writing was not in any way, it was just very simple, straightforward. The message is profound and endearing, and people absolutely love that book. Sometimes I have families who buy one for everyone in the family.
Nice.
It's called Turtle Wisdom, Coming Home to Yourself. And, you know, that little book, which was put out just for my clients, has now been published in 10 countries worldwide in Chinese and worldwide in Spanish. I want to remind you, it's simple language.
I love it. I really love it.
So, and you know, certainly Eckhart Tolle has spoke to millions. So we have to know that that is of such value. But my way is to write from my heart, and my guidance of what I know is the meaningful message, and that's how it comes through me. That's my way.
Now, earlier you spoke of pain, and in Eckhart Tolle's book, and I'm not comparing the two, but Eckhart Tolle's book talks about the pain body. Right. And in your book, you're talking about a pain that's a completely different pain. It's a traumatic experience that's wounded you. Whereas most children are born with that pain body, and so it's not exactly the same thing. But this topic of pain is so, it's unspoken of. I mean, people just don't discuss it, and people hide it under the, they brush it under the rug because, our traumas are embarrassments, they're humiliations, they're degrading experiences we've had, and yet it's so important for us to face those traumas. And if there's someone out there right now who has had just the most unspeakable trauma in their life or, experience, this book is for them too.
Yes, it is. And I'm encouraging people who have had unspeakable, I think a lot of our traumas are unspeakable.
Yes.
We have to speak those things eventually. We have to speak those things that burn as they come out of our mouths, or they stick in our throat. Earlier when I said something, you could hear like a little rumble in my chest.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm on the other side of the healing, but sometimes still when I speak about certain things, they stick a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because it was so intense, it was so hurtful. So yes, and again, I want to just say that if someone has a really intense experience around their wounding, it would be helpful for you to work with someone as you're unraveling that.
Mm-hmm.
Because what we do as humans is sometimes when we're working through or releasing certain pockets of that, the actual experience of that can be traumatic or wounding to us in itself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you see this even when someone cries really hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
So crying is good. It's a venting of those emotions.
Yes.
But sometimes when you cry, on the other side of crying, you just feel spent. And you may feel kind of, I don't know, a little bit sick, right? And so it's helpful to have someone there who can meet you in that place, who can witness you, who can hold the place of you're going to be okay.
Yes.
This is going to be okay. So that's not a time that we want the doom and gloomers there. That we want, we don't want somebody there who's going to say, oh my gosh, you'll never be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this was horrible that this happened to you and you're never going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
No, the fact is that happened to you. You are still here. So by that fact, you have already survived.
Mm-hmm.
And now what can we do to help you to live a happier life, to live a healthier life, to live a more successful life?
Absolutely.
Because when you're in pain and you're focused on the pain, or the pain is driving you, the pain is working in and through everything you do, and it's just there as this constant, it holds you back. It
Yes.
inhibits the things that you can do. But if we can address that pain and we can release that pocket of energy, you have this magnificent boost of vitality, and also I want to say material that you can then fashion into part of your expression.
Yes. Would you add clarity to that list?
And clarity to the list of what we need?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And that just kind of came to mind as you were speaking, because I think for me, as I mean, like all of us, we all have our traumas and our wounds. But for me, as I've gone through your book, I'm getting clarity that I didn't have before. And instead of looking at my wounds from this poor me attitude, I'm looking at this wound from a I'm okay attitude. This happened to me. This isn't, as I was just reading this morning, this happened to me. This doesn't define me.
Yes. Yes!
Yes, and that was
so excited about that you said this, because, you spoke before about, you used the word collective consciousness.
Yes.
And here's the thing. I am trained as a spiritual counselor or spiritual coach. And so part of what I do is I hold the consciousness for people.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that you said that about reading the book. As I was writing it, I purposefully held the understanding that when people read it, they would feel the presence of someone who understood.
Yes.
Someone who knew, and open up this fertile container for realization, for clarity, for hope, for
Absolutely.
acceptance. This did happen. I might not have chosen it, but this happened. And I'm okay. I can grow from this place. I don't have to be stuck in it.
Yes.
Because here's the thing that just gets me the most. If what you experienced was the result of a perpetrator or someone who did harm to you, if your experience was from something like war that people created, so in a sense there was still a perpetrator, right? If you stay stuck in the place of wounding, they win.
Absolutely.
They have stolen your life, and you don't get to live your full life, your happy life, your chosen life.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, so I infused the pages with that, Paul.
Yeah, that
and
was
the
great.
fact that you picked up on it, it's just very exciting to me.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'm not kidding you. Every night I go, when we go to bed, I pull out the book, and it's just like, oh my gosh, this is so good. It's such useful wisdom and knowledge that I really believe that when someone walks away from this book, this book is, there's a lot of books out there that are titled self-help books, and you read it and you feel good after you're done. But I think reading your book, it doesn't just make you feel good, it makes you feel whole. I really feel that I'm finding that a lot of the traumas that I had, I never had a tool to help me gain this perspective on them, and to really look at those tools as stepping stones, or even tools, or even a springboard to something bigger and better. Because, hey, yeah, that happened. But I am not Paul, I have diabetes. I'm not Paul, I have cancer. I'm not Paul, my leg's cut off, or whatever the case may be. I'm just Paul. And, those traumas, yes, they happen to us, but they don't define us. They don't control us. Well, they can control us if we don't take control. But this book is really, in my eyes, in my mind, a tool to help someone to really gain a whole perspective of their trauma. And so, yeah, very, very powerful tool.
And as you said, the trauma doesn't define us. It's
Yes.
a part of who we are.
Yes.
And how do you want, this would be my question to people, how do you want that to fit in to your overall wisdom story? Because we each are living our wisdom story, whether we acknowledge that or not, whether we realize that or not, whether we accept it or not. I have people who come to me and say, I'm not very wise. I make the same mistakes over and over again. So I'm not living a wisdom story. Yes, you are. That's a part of your wisdom story. Now, what are you going to do with it?
Yes.
From this place forward, how can we be with that in a different way? How can we shift that to create a different outcome?
Right.
And in fact, that's one of the things I say. That'll be the first thing you see on my website if you go there. Minor shifts can create or minor changes can create major shifts.
Mm-hmm.
So we start making these minor changes, and they all add up, and they create a major shift.
Yes. And you know, I think wholeness is such a good word because it really does, for me, it defines what my intention is. You know, my intention is to gain wholeness. I want to live a wholesome life. You know, I want to be that person that is able to reach out and touch and help people who are in need. You know, I'm an empath, and so for me, this book has special meaning because, oh my gosh, this is my tool to help other people to face the things that I may have faced or things that they're facing that they can better cope with and understand and acknowledge and overcome.
Yes.
Yeah, so.
Yes, and I think we take all these little fragments and we weave them into the wholeness of who we are, at the same time that we're revealing more and more of who we are.
Yes.
And this is the beauty of life. I mean, I don't think we're getting older. I really think we're getting better.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You know?
You know, Socrates said, "Man, know thyself." And as I reflect on those words, I think, you know, we need to be a continual student. We need to be continually moving forward, looking toward higher aspirations or higher purpose in life. And, you know, and I think wholeness encompasses that. You know, it really does.
Yes.
And
I believe that, you know, when I offer these programs to people, it's you're in a school about you.
Exactly. You are the subject matter.
Exactly.
I love it. I love it. Donna, we are out of time, and this time has gone so fast. But folks, those of you who are just joining us or have been watching us, you're watching KUHS, the stream on Melody Drive. This is the Weekend Boost, and I am Paul Lane, author of The Caregiver's Handbook, a self-help love story. And today we have been talking to Donna Denome, the 8 Keys to Wholeness, Tools for Hope-Filled Healing. And I think wholesome healing is exactly what we all are looking for in this life. And please, please get out there, order this book, get it in your library, put it into your brain, because you definitely will gain from and learn from and benefit from this book. Donna, I'm so grateful, humbly grateful to have you on the show today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Paul. You do such great work in the world.
Well, thank
Appreciate
you very much. You have a great day, Donna.